Parliament of Iran approved a bill to suspend cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. Colombian President Gustavo Petro signed into law Wednesday a new labor reform that seeks to improve the nation's workers' conditions. And in Paraguay, health workers mobilized in Asunción to demand decent working conditions and reject any attempt at privatization or outsourcing. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. The Parliament of Iran approved on Wednesday a bill to suspend cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. The member of the presidency of the Iranian Parliament, Alireza Salimi, announced the decision and pointed out that it will be sent to the Supreme National Security Council for its approval. Salimi criticized the organization for its silence about the attacks against the nuclear facilities of his country and emphasized that the measure seeks to keep the inspectors of the agency from entering the Persian territory and to sanction those who allowed their entry. The lawmaker also emphasized the will to continue working on nuclear energy for peaceful purposes in spite of the threats and recent attacks by Israel and the United States. In this context, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf highlighted the blow dealt by the National Armed Forces to Israel's military and security infrastructure and called the U.S. strike on Iranian nuclear facilities a symbolic attack.
For the first time, the military and security infrastructure of the fake country of Israel were destroyed. All of its cities became unsafe. The myth of its invincibility and the Iron Dome collapsed. With Iran's offensive power put on full display in the last strike, the residents of this land will never sleep peacefully again. There will be no security for investors and no hope for a future life in this occupied territory. The United States, having witnessed the resilience of the Iranian people, attempted to save face with a symbolic attack. In response to Iran's proportionate retaliation targeting its regional military command center, it proposed and began pursuing a ceasefire.
On Wednesday, the ceasefire between Iran and Israel continues, giving rise to cautious hope that it could lead to a long-term agreement. Tehran's Governor Mohammad Sadegh Mohammedin said over 120 homes had been completely destroyed and over 500 others have suffered significant damage. Tehran put the death toll in Iran at 606, with 5,332 people wounded, mostly civilians. Authorities on Wednesday announced the gradual restoration of internet services across the nation. The Zionist criminal attacks also targeted Iranian nuclear facilities and killed top military commanders and nuclear scientists. The president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, reaffirmed the commitment of the Iranian people after the victory over foreign aggression. The president urged to work to increase confidence through a service capable of neutralizing the enemies. He also added that his government has never tried to unleash war, but that they are prepared to respond to any attack against the homeland. In this regard, he thanked the armed forces, the police, and the security forces that remain constantly alert in the face of destabilizing threats. The Lebanese resistance movement Hezbollah congratulated the leaders and the people of Iran on the great victory over the Israeli regime. The entity pointed out that this is a new historic phase in the struggle against U.S. hegemony and Zionist arrogance in the region. Moreover, Hezbollah stated that the resistance, with its wise leadership, the courage of its people, was not intimidated by the bombings, the threats of foreign enemies, and defeated them with courage and sovereignty. The Israeli regime faces an arms and ammunition crisis after days of war against Iranian military forces. U.S. officials revealed that, in view of the shortage of Zionist war weapons, Washington seeks to maintain the ceasefire between Israel and Iran and thus guarantee the stability of the Hebrew country. This eventuality raises concern in the Knesset of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as it would weaken his military capability if fighting resumes against Iran or another nation in the region. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy admiral warned that Washington's disproportionate use of missiles to defend Israel could be affected if the current depletion continues. The Department of Economy revealed that each Iranian missile that hit Israeli cities resulted in an average of 4,000 compensation claims from the affected settlers. The briefing detailed that Iranian attacks have compelled some 18,000 Israelis to move in just 10 days. Particularly, 12,000 people have been staying in hotels, while 6,000 have been renting houses. In this context, tax authority officials warned that about 34,000 Israelis filed compensation claims for damages caused by Iranian strikes. Authorities added that the total number of claims increased to 75,000 in the last 2 years, which could cause a collapse in case assistance be delayed. On the sidelines of the NATO summit held in the Netherlands, U.S. President Donald Trump says the ceasefire was a victory for all, including Iran, that showed its large military capabilities.
No, I think it was just a tremendous victory for everybody, including Iran. Look, they've got a country, and they've got oil, and they're very smart people, and they can come back. Israel got hit very hard, especially the last couple of days. Israel was hit really hard. Those ballistic missiles, boy, they took out a lot of buildings.
Also, in this context, Trump announced there are plans to hold talks with Iran in the upcoming week that include the potential signing of an agreement.
We're going to talk to them next week with Iran. We may sign an agreement. I don't know. To me, I don't think it's that necessary. I mean, they had a war, they fought, now they're going back to their world. I don't care if I have an agreement or not. The only thing we'd be asking for, we're going to them.
The member countries of the Bolivarian Alliance for the Peoples of America, ALBA-TCP, showed their support for the proposal made by Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro to convene an international summit for peace in regards to the situation in the Middle East. In this sense, through an official statement, the bloc expressed it considers a priority to make progress towards the establishment of a nuclear weapons-free zone and other weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East in compliance with the resolutions of the United Nations, as well as to immediately stop the genocide against the Palestinian people and to move forward in the consolidation of their sovereignty as demanded by the international community. In addition, the regional alliance reiterated its unwavering commitment to peace, justice and multilateralism, stating to be confident that this initiative will contribute to a safer world and the long-awaited peace based on respect and the justice among nations. In Yemen, Houthi authorities announced that they would continue their military actions against Israel hours after a ceasefire between Iran and the Zionist government came into effect, ending a 12-day war. In a short statement on social media, Political Bureau member Mohammed al-Bukaiti said the U.S. and the Zionist entity agreeing to a ceasefire with Iran shows that military force is the only language they understand. The Houthi officials stressed that the group's military actions against Israel will continue until the aggression against Gaza ceases and the siege is lifted. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. A recent study unfolded that about 377,000 Palestinians have gone missing from Gaza's pre-genocide population before October 7, 2023. A new report from the Harvard Dataverse revealed that the Zionist attacks and the blockade of humanitarian aid have impacted on the demographics of the Gazan population. In addition, it was estimated that half of the missing victims had been children. Moreover, analysts concluded that several of the missing may have died, so they claimed that the death toll of Palestinians could reach much more than 56,000 fatalities currently recorded. Before the onset of the Israeli genocide, the civilian population in the Gaza Strip had been assessed at over 2.2 million, but the aggressions and the Zionist fire have dwindled its population considerably. In Nigeria, security sources reported that at least 17 soldiers were killed after an attack on military bases in the north of the country. The Nigerian army confirmed that the soldiers were killed when gunmen stormed 3 military bases. They reported that the gunmen launched surprise attacks on forward operating bases in the Kanwar, Dutsi Mariga and Buka areas of Niger State and another base in neighboring Kaduna State. They also detailed that the army launched a counterattack, killing several militants belonging to armed gangs known locally as bandits. In the Netherlands, NATO countries committed to invest 5% of GDP annually on defense and security-related spending by 2035. The higher defense spending goal came as a response to a demand by US President Donald Trump and to Europeans' fears that Russia poses a growing threat to their security. The new spending target is a jump worth hundreds of billions of dollars a year from the previous goal of 2%. The final declaration also includes a line promising further support to Ukraine. For its part, Russia has accused NATO of being on a path of militarization and warned of the villainization of the country in order to justify its defense spending increase. In this context, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez defended his government's decision not to increase Spain's defense spending, stressing on the high cost the pledge would signify for the nation.
Si hubiéramos aceptado lo que se había propuesto,
If we had accepted what was proposed, Spain would have to spend more than 300 billion euros by 2035. Where do these resources come from? From more taxes on citizens? From cuts in the education, health and pension systems? When I listen to the head of the opposition and the opposition criticizing the position of the Spanish government, it is clear to me that if there were another prime minister here today, Spain would have signed up to 5% of GDP in defense today. And that would be an absolute mistake for Spain.
sería un absoluto error para España.
Bosnian authorities recorded 40-degree temperatures as the hot African front arrived in southern Europe. The Bosnian Weather Service issued an orange alert and called on residents to stay hydrated and avoid exposure to high temperatures between 11 a.m. and 5 p.m. local time. Local authorities in Tuzla reported a significant increase in the number of people looking to cool off in the Panonsko artificial lake, which is the main tourist destination during the summer in this region. Weather experts say that this is expected to be the hottest summer on record due to the early arrival of the heat. The Andean region of Venezuela has reported damage due to rains and floods following the arrival of tropical wave number 9 in states such as Mérida and Táchira. Through caused rivers to swell, forcing dozens of families to evacuate due to infrastructure damage. Authorities in Trujillo confirmed that at least 30 houses were affected and another 37 families were affected in Barinas. Although there have been no reports of injuries or death due to the storm, the national government has ordered immediate attention to the affected areas to ensure the safety of the population. In Venezuela, thousands of citizens take to the streets with banners and slogans to call for peace between peoples. The massive mobilization of Venezuelans in Caracas shows their support for the proposal made by President Nicolás Maduro to hold a World Peace Summit. In this sense, the people of Venezuela are gathering at different points of the capital city and other cities across the country in support of the president's initiative. The revolutionary leader's idea responds to the diplomatic efforts of the Bolivarian government to achieve peace in the world against imperial wars and in favor of the sovereignty and self-determination of the peoples. And we have a second show break coming up. Before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Fun show break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Colombian President Gustavo Petro signed into law Wednesday a new labor reform that seeks to improve the nation's workers' conditions. The reform is expected to limit the daytime workday to 7 p.m., progressively reduce the working week, increase remuneration during holidays, days off and Sundays, and limit short-term labor contracts, among other benefits. According to government officials and trade union representatives, the law will allow to recover rights that workers had at the beginning of the 1990s, when labor laws began to be made more flexible. On the other hand, entrepreneurs and opposition leaders assure that the reform will increase operating costs and will affect mainly small businesses, generating more unemployment. Health sector workers in Paraguay mobilized to demand decent working conditions. On a day of protest called the Great White Tide, health personnel gathered outside the Ministry of Public Health in the Paraguayan capital. The medical workers, who came from various regions of the country, rejected any attempt to privatize or outsource public services. They denounced such attempts as an attack on the quality of service and their contractual rights. Union leaders emphasized the urgent need for improvements to working conditions and the public health system. According to international organizations, Haiti is currently one of the countries with the highest number of victims of forced displacement. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees reported that over 21 million people have been forced to flee their homes. According to the organization's data, Haiti and Colombia have the largest displaced civilian populations in the Americas, consisting of internally displaced persons and asylum seekers. In Haiti, armed gangs control over 85% of the capital, Port-au-Prince, as well as other areas of the Caribbean island. This has resulted in the death of over 2,680 people and injuries to at least 957 others. In Argentina, deputies of the Union for the Homeland Group pushed for impeachment proceedings against President Javier Milei after he declared Iran an enemy country. The deputies informed that the measure was taken after the warlike statements made by the Argentine president where he assured that they would maintain their support to Israel and the United States in the Middle East conflict. They further affirmed that President Javier Milei risked the sovereignty of the country, noting the head of state did not count on the Congress to make this kind of decisions. Likewise, the Argentine Justicialist Party rejected the president's support to Israel and the United States in the conflict with Iran. Millions of tourists have come back to the country in the Brazilian northeast for the annual June festivals. Our correspondent Brian Mir has more.
Brazil may be famous for its carnival, but in large swaths of the country, particularly in the northeast, the June festivals centered around St. Anthony, St. John, and St. Peter are more popular. Originally brought to Brazil by Portuguese colonizers in the 1500s, over the centuries the festivals have been infused with African and indigenous folklore, leading to a social phenomenon which is uniquely Brazilian.
Portuguese Catholic religious myths, the indigenous celebration of the corn harvest, and African drums and musical traditions have merged, laying the foundation of this great celebration, the biggest and best St. John's festival in the world here in Caruaru, Pernambuco.
Every year, in the northeastern backcountry, Campina Grande and Caruaru vie for the title of Brazil's largest St. John's Festival by hosting free shows with nationally popular musical acts. This year, the Caruaru Mayor's Office announced that 3 million tourists have already visited the city. But to many, the most important thing about St. John's is preserving local history and culture.
Caruaru's June festivals are important because they don't just focus on music, drinking and eating, but on folklore in general. So in addition to those things, there's theater, circus, poetry and dance.
Many of the traditional St. John's dances, like quadrilha, a stylized country wedding dance, serve a social function, strengthening local communities by bringing young people together in their neighborhoods for regular practice sessions for months before the June parties start off.
We spend the whole year practicing. It's a kind of social work too, because we are working with poor children and adolescents. It's a way to motivate. This gets to stop doing wrong things on the street and focus popular culture, where they encounter a completely different world from where they come from. So it's very satisfying for me to do this with them.
St. John's Festival traditionally ends on St. Peter's Day on June 29th, but more and more local governments are spilling the parties into July. Brian Mir, teleSUR, Caruaru.
And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For teleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.